Thank you.
Okay, we have started the recording. Uh, top one, whenever you are ready.
Am I perfectly audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Also, I'd like POIs in chat. Can I set up my timer? Guys, can where's Hello. Starting in 3, 2, 1. God is no longer about mercy. God is no longer about charity. God is no longer about sacrifice. Panel God's reduced down to not going to work for him, not even like drinking a single drop of water for him, and not bowing down to him 5 times a day. That is a word we oppose. Two things in my setup before I move on to my positive case. First, what are the incentives of organized religion? Because this is the main stakeholder that both sides have to benefit. Two things over here. A, organized religion wants buy-in. So it wants existing followers to keep buying into it, not be alienated. It wants like new followers and or like followers who are unsure to then come onto its side and wants to convince them. But then second, organized religion wants you to respect its central authority, wants you to stick to its core messaging because that's the only way it can hold power over people and be organized in the first place. So then, second, what is the alternative on our side? Like, what is the world that we propose? Two things. A, we say that these strict requirements should not be imposed. So there should not be the idea that you would go to hell if you don't follow these requirements. We'd rather religious leaders recommend these, but not impose them, and like don't say that this is something that's completely necessary for anyone to do to be able to be a good Muslim in the first place. But then second, you don't focus on these rituals. Instead, you focus on the core values of, let's say, Islam or Christianity or Hinduism. So this looks like within Ramadan, you don't focus and you don't have to single drop of water for these 30 days. You rather focus on the core value of charity, on the core value of sacrificing for the poor, for the people who are vulnerable. And these are the ideas that come out on top when you deprioritize the strictness of these rituals that are just in place for the sake of it. So then, the first argument on why we think religious messaging loses its value or inside opposition's world when these strict requirements are like a delta for what's a good follower and what's a bad follower. The first idea on like the like what's wrong with religion within the status quo. We think religion has been reduced down to only a set of rituals. This looks like people like Muslims only care about the fact that I fast 30 days or like I pray 5 times a day, but not the fact that not the teachings of God, so not things like charity. So this looks like many Muslims just fasting 30 days a day, but none of like them engaging within charity within Ramadan or caring about poor people and like people still dying hungry on the streets within Ramadan and not having that sense of community. We think this is because necessarily the imposition of these strict rituals comes over the cost of like preaching the core values of these religions. Why then do I say this? Understand the concept of opportunity cost. This opportunity cost exists on two levels. A, understand that the social capital that religious leaders and organized religion has is limited. So this means that you can if you want to impose these restrictions onto your followers, your coercive power onto your followers is limited. You cannot have them also fast 30 days and pray 5 times a day and still be like, but still care about the values that we preach. That this coercive power ends at some place. On our side, when you say them, when you tell them that, hey, maybe if these are some restrictions that you cannot follow, we still want you to rather focus on the core values. You preach those core values. You say that this is why these things are important. This is why these rituals are important, and we'd rather subscribe to those values than just blindly following those rituals. We think people also better able to rationalize religion in their minds. They're able to be more committed to religion on their. This opportunity cost also exists on a simple level that if we're going to emphasize strict requirements and the focus is just going to be on if you like fast 30 days or not, you're necessarily then not going to like explore the nuances of why this fasting exists in the first place when the concept is so black and white. For all of those reasons, then we think we prevent the dilution of the core messaging of these religions. We say that you prioritize that when you prioritize values, you then have more coercive power over people because then you're able to like influence their lifestyles. They're able to maybe be more committed to their religion when they make the like religious values the central thing in their life, and they operate on all of their life's aspects operate on those values rather than just focusing on one or two restrictions. But then secondly, also panel, we protect the messaging of these religions because these religions preach that your relationship to your God is something that is personal. So God sees you all the time. God is very proximate to you. God is merciful. We think when religious leaders impose these restrictions and take it in their own hands, they go against that idea. We think precedent if this already exists. So things like you going to hell or heaven is that specifically tied to the context of the person and their personal context. In some situations, Islam, people are also allowed to eat haram if their personal context is so bad that they cannot afford anything else and they're so destitute. We think when all of this precedent existed and the messaging of religion was that God was proximate to you, we think we stuck true to that messaging when we advocated for these requirements to not be the delta of your religious commitment. But that second argument on why they get less buy-in on their side. Here first understand the need of the time. We think religious requirements were made in I don't know the pre-biblical times, and then these requirements are out of touch of modern reality. So this looks like when Islam first came into place, probably not going to work for like 4 days was not such a big deal. But now in the modern society, most people, vulnerable people, are not being able to like miss out on things like going to work for even a day because it's something that's so important for them to earn their livelihood for their family because they operate off of a living wage, for example. We then think that these strict restrictions for three reasons are like then alienate people and restrict by. A, they're harder for people to rationalize. So I don't know if I even drinking a single drop of water is going to like lead to God being so angry to me that I'm going to go to hell necessarily. But that's something that's so unforgivable and I should buy into it continually. But then second, these requirements are often very hard to follow for most people. So not having any like premarital relationship is something that's so against the core values a person themselves for or their lifestyle that they cannot just opt into it in the first place, and it's very hard for them to follow. But then lastly, these rituals, as I already told you, overshadow core values, and that's the opportunity because people are now less committed to these religions in the first place. The impact then is that you have an all or nothing narrative existing within religion. Now, I'm going to analyze the impact on the spectrum of stakeholders. So first, on followers that already commit to religion, we think these followers are now alienated when, because of their circumstance, they cannot follow these strict requirements. So if I'm a very devout Muslim, but I cannot, for example, had to skip my fast for 3 days because I was so sick, then I'm going to feel alienated. I'm going to feel otherized, and probably like going to like stay away from religion because I don't think I'm being a good Muslim in the first place. But then second, people who are iffy about religion and who do not sure if they want to buy in or not. These people panel not pushy and now disillusioned because they don't know why they're following into these strict requirements in the first place. And now they're scared to be able to opt into religion in the first place. They feel more distanced by it. But then lastly, on new followers, we show to new followers that religion is not a scary cut, but then we also limit abuse of power. This looks like religious leaders not being able to coerce people and be able to like, for example, there's no mass slut shaming within the streets because I didn't wear my abaya every day, or there isn't like there's an abuse on to like children that they have to necessarily follow these like strict requirements that religion imposes on them. They're able to vote their religion themselves when on our side they rather subscribe to the core values of religion and understand why those things are important. Because we increase the quantity and the quality of buy-in, because we stick true to the messaging of these religions in the first place, we think we take this.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 21 seconds. I now invite the first speaker for team opposition. Here.
Yeah, can I just get 30 seconds?
Sure.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Shabash.
Yeah. PYs in the chat, please. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. God is still about charity. God is still about sacrifices. And God is still about forgiveness. On your side, you lose all of this because you don't focus on the core values within organized religion. So proud to oppose. I have 3 argumentations for you at side opposition. First, how organized religion and proprietors have an interest of self-preservation in terms of purity, essence, distinctness, and moral value. Second, how religious following will and worship is improved, and thirdly, how attainment of power is going to increase. But before I get into all of my argumentation, some key pieces of rebuttals. First, on their idea about how they focus on core values. And these core values that they outline to you are empathy, forgiveness, and sacrifices. But here's what my problem is. Because these same core values can only be derived and learned from these same strict requirements. That's exactly why religion emphasizes on these strict requirements in the first place. Otherwise, it wouldn't have any need to do that. But what is any thought? But secondly, what is any thought without action, right? In order for you to be a good person or a good follower in general, right? You have to do or carry out these actions in the first place because this is a way for you to reaffirm your faith. But secondly, their idea about how nuances behind core values don't exist. No, panel, that's not true. These nuances behind core values already exist. This looks like Bible telling people about the strict requirements, right, and the reason behind why they should do it. This looks like Quran telling people why you should fast, how it's an important way for you to empathize with poor people who don't get enough food to eat, etc., etc. We think at that point in time, the entire first argument about how they're going to focus on core values still exists because we can just co-opt that on our side, right? We're going to focus on better core values, and the quality of these core values is going to be much better on our side. Secondly, about their idea about how there's going to be less buy-in on our side, right? And here's what they tell you, and here's what my response to this is, right? They tell you that people won't pray because they have something super important to do. That's an extreme characterization, right? Because things like qaza prayer still exist, right? Religion takes into account these sort of problems that people have, right? But secondly, this is not true, right? If everyone just stopped praying because they have super important thing to do, I don't think religion would still exist on their side, right? So that's just an extreme characterization that you want to run. Secondly, the idea about how people are going to opt out because of strict requirements. No, panel, that's also not true. People opt out because they don't believe in that religion anymore. This looks like people don't not leaving Islam because they don't believe in Allah anymore. They don't leave because of these strict requirements, right? I have 3 argumentations for you before I get into some key pieces of rebuttal. One, some key pieces of framing. One, this debate is about the interests of organized religion, right? That is to say, this debate isn't about whether organized religion is good or bad. Organized religions panel have different divisions. This looks like Pope in Christianity, Ulema Council, Imams, Mullahs in Islam, right? And have some authority and power over organized religions, right? At that point in time, organized religions also care about their followers. And whatever side benefits organized religions and its interests, we think we support that. First argument then about organized religion and proprietors have an interest of self-preservation in terms of purity, essence, distinctness, and value. Three premises I want to tackle here. First, on essence, right? One, religion is rooted in theology, right? This looks like religion stemming from theology. This looks like everything in religion stemming from religious scriptures, right? And how these scriptures were words of God, how the prophets were messengers of God. This also looks like the 10 commandments or the pillars of Islam that organized religions talk about. This is important and integral part of your religion because they make the basis of theology. Secondly, religions care about theology, right? This is important because all actions or personal commitments stem from theology. This looks like praying 5 times a day, how this teaches you discipline, focus, and meditation. This also looks like how fasting in Ramadan teaches you the suffering of people below the poverty line, how they don't get enough food, their pain, and how you should empathize with them. Secondly, these commitments aren't redundant and useless, panel. These actions have some thought or belief behind them. But why is this exclusive? This is exclusive because praying 5 times a day is an exclusive way for you to get close to God. That is to say, this is an exclusive way. This is a dialogue between you and God. You can talk to God about anything, and I don't think any other person and I don't think any other action can do that. Thirdly, we think strict requirements are needed to preserve religion. Insofar as you violate these strict requirements, you violate or go against the theology of religion. Secondly, preservation is being violated. And the context behind this argument is that there's a decrease in religiosity. This is because of modernization, secularization, and how other religions, other ideologies are popping up. That is to say, minimalism, Orientalism. That is to say that currently religions are not in their truest form. This also looks like the bastardization of religion. Second tier about distinction, right? Theology makes your religion special relative to other religions. This looks like how Eid differentiates Islam from other religions. This also looks like how Azan, which is done by a human in Islam, differentiates it from other religions where it's done by, I don't know, fire or ringing a bell, etc. But also, this is important because organized religions have an incentive to make sure that their religion is special. This is important because core ideas or core values stem from this. They stem from the idea that religion is separate and how they give you an independent identity. On their side, this independent identity that you have simply goes away. Thirdly, about moral value of religion. The moral purpose of religion is to teach you life lessons, right? That is to say, it teaches you good things. And these good things that these strict requirements, they aren't always very extreme. But before I go into my second argument, I'll take a PY if there's any. No PY. Second argument about religious.
Insofar,
Yeah.
insofar as religious theology focuses on the messaging behind these rituals and you preserve that, and insofar as markers like azan still exist, how do you claim anti-religious?
We don't claim anti-religion. Second argument, religious following and worship is improved. A couple of premises I want to tackle here. First, on the incentives of organized religion. They have two incentives. One, they want to have devoted followers. This is because theology says it. But secondly, the church has a convoluted way. That is to say that they think that actions are the only way for you to preserve religion. Secondly, organized religion also cares about the quality of religion. Second premise about the quality of religion. This is important because there are fundamental things or values that you cannot go against. This looks like the pillars of Islam within religion, but also the 10 commandments within Christianity. That is to say that these things are not optional. But secondly, the nuances behind guidelines. I already told you this. Religion focuses on the nuances that you have within religion. But thirdly, dedication and commitment is very important. Insofar as I've already told you that actions and that reaffirm your faith, actually tell religion about what your thoughts are, what your beliefs are. We think that's important. But secondly, how is quality of undermined right now? This is important because lots of people in religion don't care about it anymore, don't care about it. This looks like free riders, right, who just in it for the shits and giggles. But secondly, people are just generally unaware of requirements of religion, and this is important because they have an incentive to care about it. Third argument about the attainment of power. I've already told you that organized religion includes things like popes, ulema council, right? And they want to preserve the power of religion, right? And they want to lose the exclusive power that they have within society. But secondly, these power is on three levels. One, they want their power to be relative to other religions. That is to say, they want more power than other religions in society. Secondly, they want to be exclusive, right? For example, the conception of religion is for them is as great as greater than life, right? And you won't get this same effect from other ideologies such as minimalism or Orientalism, right? Insofar as strict requirements don't exist, religion loses its specialty. So proud to post.
Can I get 10 seconds?
Sure. Thank you for your speech. Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 10 seconds. I now invite, after the required break, we'll have second speaker for team proposition.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Starting my speech in shows.
Oh.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before I thought my issues a strategic call out. The only path to victory panel in this debate was assuming that we don't follow core principles of religion or religious theology, like however fancy way they want to package it. They assume that the only way these core values come from is redundant rituals. Firstly, I think it's really uncomparative when they try to make the debate about, oh, following religion, like core values of religion, versus not following core values of religion, which was not our case. But secondly, because I'll prove to you that this is the only way you lead to people caring about core values of religion or theology of religion in the first place. Then the first issue on rituals versus core values, and does one come at the opportunity cost of the other? They were like, we told you about how an overemphasis on the rituals of religion, such as not eating during the fast, not brushing your teeth during the fast, or not going to work during Sabbath, mean that you incur an opportunity cost in teaching the values behind those rituals. Why is that so? Nashla gave you analysis on how the religions have limited social capital, and there's the opportunity cost to how much you can coerce people into following a religion. So, if, for example, I'm doing a lot of work fasting and fasting and fasting, I want to work understanding the reasoning behind fasting and the values attached behind fasting, because there's something that is being imposed on me and I'll focus on completing that to the fullest extent. Because you know what? If I brush my teeth during the fast, I will go to hell. So I think all the energies of people are then wasted on figuring out the nitty-gritties of these rituals, and if they're good Muslims, if they're eating or not if they're good Muslims, if they're doing charity or not. This was a nuance they completely ignored. What were their responses? They were like, action leads you to understand core values. And for example, by staying like hungry for 3 weeks, you will understand what poor people go through, that teaches you core values. Firstly, I don't think that's true, panel. Why isn't this true? This is because of the nature of imposition of these rituals. Because notice, when people tell you to follow these rituals and they tell you to fast and tell you to, for example, like pray or do the wuzu right, you don't think about why is this person telling me to do this. You think about, okay, so now I have to like perfectly fast and perfectly follow this ritual. You don't think about the ideas attached to important is fasting in the correct way, not for example like helping other people or fostering a sense of empathy in you. Versus on our side, when you focus on those values and say that these rituals were just a subsidiary idea to them, and you can adopt them if you want to, you can adopt them if you don't want to. We think then people that leads to greater introspection and people caring about religion more. But they were like, no, that's not true, because nuance exists in the Bible and the Quran. Firstly, I don't think anyone reads the Bible and the Quran. I don't think scriptures are easily accessible to most people. Because firstly, because the language scriptures are in, most religious communities have a disconnect because, for example, we read the Quran in Arabic and there are various translations of it. But then secondly, because most people, again, don't have the time and the capacity to go in depth in those things. But then thirdly, because when clergy is telling you about those things, again, when religion is just about these values, the clergy focuses its time on explaining to you how to carry out these rituals or how to do these rituals rather than explain the meaning behind them, because that is what is more important. And then the focus and imposition necessarily comes at the opportunity cost of this nuance panel. But then secondly, on theology, and they're like, we need to respect theology, and theology emphasizes these rituals. I don't think that's true, because insofar as they agree that theology, the main purpose of theology was to tell you what religion was about and the values behind religion, and insofar as we preserve them because we said that you need to emphasize those values more and teach those values to a greater extent, we think we take that, and that was completely uncomparative. Like, I don't think jargon is replacement for analysis, and insofar as they ignore all of ours, we take this issue. But then, secondly, on buy, and they were like, people get less religious because they don't do these rituals, the hard work for the religion. Panel, notice the weird contention here, right? Because insofar as religious people now can't do things like not eat for the rest of the day because there are certain limitations there. Maybe they're sick, maybe because these are basic human desires that are hard to resist. This leads to people prioritizing them less. And when people prioritize them less, they prioritize religion less generally. And this leads to religious people becoming less religious in the first place. This was the analysis we gave you, which they completely ignored. On our side, when religious people focus more on the ideas behind these values, they're less likely to become less religious because now they can do things like charity. They can do things like, for example, helping other people out because firstly, it's easier to rationalize them, but secondly, it's just easier to do those things. But they're like, religions need to be special and unique, and the Azan differentiates you from Hindus. That was completely uncomparative, panel, because the Azan still exists on our side, even prayer exists on our side. The only thing that doesn't exist on our side, or that isn't focused on in our side, are rituals that keep you from practicing things that were basic to human needs and desires, such as going to work, such as eating, such as not practicing premarital relationships. But then, panel, we think we enable a more committed base of followers for these religions, and also a wider base of followers for these religions. Because we gave you analysis on external actors who don't buy into the religion right now, who probably are alienated by the religion because they think Islam is just a restrictive cult about wearing the burqa all the time. We think those people are incentivized to join the religion. Talking about people who are in the religion but disillusioned from the religion, get back to the religion when religion becomes more about proximity to God and all those ideas. And we think the purest ideas of religions are better preserved when they focus on a messaging regarding God being proximate to you, God being near you, God being merciful. But then my positive extension on how the rituals lead to abuse of religious authority and that disenfranchise people is bad for the religious community in general. Why is that so? Because notice, panel, there's a hierarchy that exists in organized religion. This is the hierarchy that imposes these values in the first place. But before that, do you have any POIs?
Yes, in the instance that you're talking about organized religion, like the clergy, like the Pope, etc., would not just want random people to misrepresent the religion by eating pork and drinking wine at the point and also claiming that they are Muslims simultaneously.
You say that religion was about core values and what theology taught you. Insofar as that is true, I don't think people doing things like eating something that is mildly not allowed in religion misrepresents their religion. But also, I think what the clergy cares about more is more people following the religion and them having more power over people's lives and about how people lead their lives that is better enabled through values, not through restrictive rituals that not everyone can follow. But then on abuse. So insofar as a hierarchy imposes these values on this heads of families, this looks like, for example, mullahs in mosques and the clergy in your town, for example. Then it means then that these rituals are uniquely more imposed on vulnerable people in society who are not in those positions of power. This is like women, this looks like children, which means then that these people are forced to give away their autonomy and to practice these rituals. What does this look like? Probably a sick woman on her period will be forced to, for example, fast and not eat in front of other people because hey, this is how the men are imposing it on her. This looks like, for example, the father not taking her daughter to an abortion clinic because you should not have had premarital relations in the first place. Panel, we think then that it leads to unique exploitations of these weak actors. This was important for organized religion. Why? Because if one, these actors are disincentivized from organized religion and the organized religion does not hold power over them anymore. But then secondly, we think that all organized religion uniquely did care about its followers and the well-being of its followers in the first place, as it was based on ideas of community and building a community and working for that community. Then we think that that is a unique harm to organized religion. In spite, they haven't dealt with any of our case and built only on comparative arguments proposition.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 25 seconds. I now invite the second speaker for team opposition.
Guys, you guys are not on mute. BDC.
Oh, sorry.
Am I both audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think it's very important to understand that side proposition in this debate has consistently mischaracterized what strict requirements look like, what this debate is about, and what the interests of organized religion are. That looks like them saying that women on their period or during their menstrual cycle have to fast is something that is literally empirically untrue. Like, even if you're going to use an example, like, please pick one that is correct, right? Context specific forgivenesses, even within the ambit of strict requirements, do exist. At that point in time, I'm actually going to pause it. If you can make these small changes, etc., even on our side, even in the contemporary world where there are strict requirements, even if theology makes these exceptions, why is it that you can make these exceptions, etc., but still have requirements, strict requirements at the same time? Why is that not the policy of side of proposition with this debate? I do not understand. But also, we're not forcing people to do this. This is very, very important, right? Because they're saying that, oh, you're going to tell people that if you don't do this, then you're going to go to hell. We're talking about, and this debate specifically is about the perception of the interest of organized religion. That is to say, what does the Pope say about religion, right? What does the church say about religion, and how much do they value organized religion? At the end of the day, if people follow it, etc., or not, that is something that is debatable. That is something that we will prove within this debate and tell you why strict requirements are important. But at the end of the day, what they had to prove was the interest of religion and whether they align with espousing a narrative that religion should have strict requirements. And I'm going to get into the central strategic contradiction that they make right here. If the interest of organized religion, in their best case, is giving these values importance, etc., and not having strict requirements, then why is it that on their side there are these core values in Islam that are represented through strict requirements? Like, you give people, and that is something that's represented through zakat. You empathize, and that is represented through fasting, etc., during Ramadan. If these values are so important, why are they actively espousing a narrative on their side that they're not important enough to be strict requirements in the first place, right? I think that is actually going to disempower these values, etc. But also, I'm going to now get into the practical issues since they've already made a bunch of contradictions. The rest of them are integrated within my clashes. So the first issue I'm going to talk about is whether there's going to be buy-in or not, right? I think that this is, number one, an unimportant issue because of all of the host of analysis that still stands in this debate, host of analysis that was unrebutted in terms of how religion, etc., particularly organized religion, the people that we're talking about, this looks like extreme fundamentalists, etc. This looks like the Pope or clergymen, stuff like that. People who are extremely have extreme sense of religiosity, etc. Why these people would not feel that it is the interest of organized religion to have maybe free riders, etc., stuff like that. How people who do misrepresent the religion is not something that they want. But also, even if we talk about buy-in, what do they say here? They say that buy-in won't happen because it's very difficult to follow because of circumstances, etc. We already told you things like giving qaza, etc. Things like, forgiveness for certain things is something that is it's already integrated within these religions. So I'm not sure why their examples, if they are empirically untrue, prove anything within this debate. But also, I would say that you don't actually, for example, join a religion based on if it has strict requirements or not. That is to say, when they say things, it is easier to be religious, they're literally making this debate about atheists who might or might not want to join a particular religion. I'm not sure why in the contemporary world it is like very minority cases, etc., or maybe there's 0.1% of the world that considers a different religion, or that considers that, okay, I was an atheist, but I'm going to now join a religion, right? If those are the only actors they talk about, people who have no belief in God, people who don't want to do anything like prayer or worship, etc., I don't think those stakeholders at the end of this debate matter. These are minimal circumstances. These are marginal things that they're talking about, not what the actual debate is about. But if they really want to talk about buy-in, buy-in is greater on our side because the stakeholder they identify is moderates on the edge, people who are iffy, etc. If that is true, the fact that commitment exists to extreme levels, etc., within religion is going to signify or send a message that this is of importance. I'm going to pause it here. The reason why you do have less buy-in within the contemporary world for religion is actually misidentified by side proposition. That is to say, it is not that you have stringent requirements that make people less religious. Centuries ago, you had the highest concentration of religious individuals, but you also had extremely strict requirements. Why then is it that why then was that the case? We think that the conception of religion has fundamentally devolved over time. That is to say, religion is no longer seen as something that is larger than life. Religion is no longer seen as something that should have a master status in society. It is the same as maybe subscribing to a belief like Orientalism or minimalism, etc. At that point in time, you fundamentally cripple and incapacitate the value of religion. That's why people leave, not because of strict requirements, but also, I don't think people's faith, etc., they may be born into religious families or born as a Muslim, is that iffy and they're going to leave. They're literally talking about people who are probably not even part of the religion at this point, or who aren't religious at all and care more about other things. That's not what this debate is about. We don't think the interest of organized religion is just about catering to these people. But if they're talking about moderates on the edge, the commitment and the significance, the fact that we espouse a value that, okay, religion is something that's exclusive within society, that actually makes you join. Why is that? Because you're inspired by this community that holds this religion so dear. You're like, okay, I don't know what the objective truth within life is. I'm very confused. Maybe these people know what's up because they genuinely believe in this very strongly, to the point in time that they want to subscribe to these stringent requirements. They said core values should be prioritized over strict requirements. This is the second part of the practical theme. I think if they're talking about core values versus strict requirements, this is something that is completely nonsensical. Again, there's not an opportunity cost because these things are mutually inexclusive. That is to say, the fact that you have these values, etc., are reflected within the requirements of the religion. That's like all of their examples. They said Sabbath is something that's bad, but also Judaism has a value called sympathy. The reason why you don't go to work on Sabbath is because you're in mourning. This looks like how empathy is taught to you by fasting in Ramadan. This is how forgiveness, etc., is taught to you through the fact that the prophet Sunnah, etc., were something where he forgave people or did not spare. This looks like how charity, or the fact that giving is something an important moral value in society, is represented through zakat. We think you create unique incentives for such core values to be implemented within society that they would not on their side of the house. Even if you have a core belief, that value of that core belief cannot be translated to society, or actually discussed or conversed in a meaningful way when you see that there should not be any requirement for this. The requirement is what makes the core value valuable in the first place, right? And belief without action or consequence is meaningless. Also, I'd like to add my own positive contribution here within this clash because it makes sense. The type of virtue signaling that they're talking about, where you just talk about religious values in absentia, in a vacuum, etc., is not something meaningful for society. This looks like, why is it important to translate this virtue signaling into actual action, etc., in terms of good benefits for society or moralism, etc. This looks like how in 2023, 73%, a majority of all charity within the United States of America, was to religious organizations. That is also in the frame that United States of America is a pretty secular society. Religious charity giving is something that is extremely prevalent today, etc. We think that that's something I think incapacitate, because they're like, core values matter. It does not matter if if you practice them or not. The conception of religion is malleated, and that's going to lead to its lack of importance. But in the practical issue, they never actually discuss our incentives, etc. How the quality of faith matters because theology says this. How you want people who identify with the religion actively, because if they don't identify with the religion, they're random people who are free riders. There's a lack of utility that organized religion gets from that. But also, people who misrepresent the religion to the nth degree. If you're going out and swearing at people, if you're not giving zakat and don't believe in a thing called charity because you believe in capitalism and weigh that more, because you don't believe in strict requirements, and even the Pope is telling you that you don't need to bloody believe in these, I think that's something that is not good for quality of faith. Religious power is something that they agree with. If there's an incentive for entrenchment from the clergy, etc., you only do that when you have things like control over people through making them exercise certain rituals and stringent requirements. In the absence of that, if you're just telling them, oh, this is something good, and you don't need to do this, I'm not sure how that creates any sort of religious power. In terms of the principle, they literally did not rebut our principle. We told you essence, distinctness, etc., all matters. How theology says this, etc., how you want to differentiate from other religions. And God is not personal within this debate. This debate is about the interests of organized religion. Private religion is probably one of the worst arguments to make. For all given reasons, clearly side our position.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 25 seconds. I now invite third speaker for team proposition. Third proposition.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Just a second. Okay. Are your timers? Okay. So I'll be beginning my. By the way, POI is in chat. Okay. Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. The primary assertion, and unfortunately, this is a rather low quality debate, but what this debate has come to is the idea that they are saying you do some practices which creates importance for values, and we are saying that values are important and then you will do practices. I'm going to break this deadlock in two important ways, and I want you to notice how this engages with the analysis. Firstly, I think the important part is values in terms of what religion ought to prioritize. Why is this the case? Because religion, like theology itself, like scripture, religion, most of that is interpretations of teachings from, say, prophets or like religious origins, right? So you're trying to interpret what someone's actions were in order to derive what ought to be done in most situations. Notice the language when we talk about religion. It tells us it's a complete guide. It tells us what to do in all situations, etc. Because it gives us those four fundamental values. Insofar as that's true, teaching those values needs to be the most important goal of the clergy, etc. This is important because Raina told you that currently this does not happen. You change all your focus onto the rituals themselves and ignore the core teachings. People are not able to and are not incentivized by the church or the clergy to read the scripture. This looks like your local imam telling you just pray 5 times a day and do like the things I'm going to tell you to do, and you're never actually incentivized to read what's going on. Secondly, I think our model empowers more change. The reason this happens is because their model is fundamentally limited to the rituals of the religion itself, i.e., they can force someone to give zakat, or they can force someone to, I don't know, like not like do the Sabbath, right? But they cannot force people to apply those same teachings and same values to the rest of their life. This is where Nashmia's unengaged analysis about social capital and the opportunity cost becomes important, because they simply asserted that there is no opportunity cost. But the fact of the matter is that if you have to hold a stick over someone's head to tell them to do a certain thing, then you are not able to influence the rest of their actions when they are acting outside the ambit of religion. This is where the misrepresentation they're talking about actually happens, because you have people who, like, for example, the Catholic Church, which is now at this point infamous for its cases, numerous cases of child abuse, where these sorts of incidents are publicized, that your main preachers are doing these sorts of things. The problem is you never looked at their values. You only looked at whether they prayed properly or like memorized the correct like prayers or whatever. And so you're not able to actually prioritize the people who do buy into those values the most, because you looked at things like whether they ate pork or like occasionally drank alcohol, rather than if they embody the things you want your religion to embody. Why is this then more like misrepresentation more harmful on their side? Because maybe we lose some amount of uniqueness on our side, but on their side, firstly, the representation of your religion looks more hypocritical to people, so people do not think you are a credible actor. But then secondly, you're also more likely to have strict optics, which means that people think your religion is oppressive, etc., which empowers all the analysis we gave you about how how people are unlikely to buy into your religion at the point where the optics of your religion is that everyone is a perfect Muslim, everyone prays 5 times a day, everyone goes to the mosque, and everyone wears the abaya. At that point, people don't want to enter your religion. But secondly, note crucially, this was not just about converts as they wanted to dewey in this debate. This is also about children, about relatives, etc. Because understand that parents, especially in the modern day where people are so have so many different sources of information, parents have to justify the choice of being religious to their children. If you do not teach them the valuable things about that religion, then they're unlikely to opt into it. If the optics of it are that you are a perfect Muslim, then they do not think they can hold themselves to that standard. They think, oh, I'm going to hell anyway, might as well enjoy it. This is the primary narrative we see in society. So I think that takes out the major deadlock in this debate. But another thing that third op speaker might try to build, which I'm going to deal with right now, because understand that rituals don't teach you these values either. They wanted to frame it this way at certain points, but I don't think this is true. Firstly, understand that oftentimes it has the opposite effect because you're not adapting to modern times, i.e., in when Islam was created, going to Makkah was like a 2 or 3 day pilgrimage. It wasn't very difficult, but now it is, and religion hasn't adapted to that. So people are unlikely to do it, or unlikely to want to do it. But then, secondly, three reasons why people don't change their beliefs when they act out these rituals. Right? Firstly, you're not able to rationalize the symbolism of it. So I don't understand why me drinking a half a cup of water because I'm really thirsty is so bad when I'm fasting if I've never been taught the importance of this scripture or the values that it represents, because oftentimes these religious actions are purely symbolic, just like Sabbath, etc. Secondly, I don't understand the meaning of the impact that we're trying to get. So I don't understand why it is so important for me to value charity or why I should care about the poor people. So I'm unlikely to keep doing them or embody that in other ways in my lifestyle. Thirdly, I think you only emphasize certain parts of scripture because there is an opportunity cost. And notice that these strictly following these rituals is often extremely complicated. People will literally go to multiple different mosques and have to meet with a lot of people, and you're literally taught from a young age just to be able to do namaz correctly or do the ablution properly, because these are often extremely complicated. This means that there is a significant opportunity cost and that you don't teach them the core values. But secondly as well, I think on their side you also have negatives, right? So you're framing it as the act itself, the act of doing namaz is important, or the act of these religious actions are important in and of themselves rather than what they symbolize. And then secondly, people often feel imposed on because they feel like this is being emphasized on them. At that point, you don't teach them the values either, so you're not really achieving anything. So then why did our argumentation about buy-in weigh over all of this? Because we gave you a fairly simple frame, right? Firstly, I don't think buy-in is unimportant. It's extremely important to these religious institutions, given that it's the primary way they have power. But then secondly, I don't understand this idea of free riders. Like, what? If you have more followers, that's probably a good thing. So I think you're able to encourage people to actually join on our side of the house because you're not alienating them for doing things like doing qaza namaz, or the fact that often generally in religions you don't have these sorts of exceptions, right? So if you do mess up these strict requirements, you're not able to opt back into the religion. But then secondly, we think these strict requirements are what disincentivize people to join in the first place. So at the end of this debate, it boils down to a fairly simple comparative of values versus rituals. We told you that these rituals have failed to adapt to modern times and are no longer relevant for influencing the bulk of people's lifestyles. They may be able to force people to do a few changes, but they don't win the debate overall.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 25 seconds. I now invite the third speaker of team opposition. Third op, before you start, just give me a minute as well. Just
Great idea, Shahan bhai. Amazing call.
Best. Acha, I am ready for myself. Let's wait for Asha. Asha, are you here? Chalo, let's take a minute. All three, you are ready otherwise?
Hello, I'm back.
Perfect. So I now invite the third speaker for team opposition.
Am I audible? Okay, wait a second.
Yeah,
I think let's see it. Okay. Okay. I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Side proposition was debate because of three structural reasons. Firstly, I just want to note this down because the fact that they have such extreme characterization. So the characterization of as to how, for example, women can't are will be like forced to, let's say, pray on their periods, etc., or generally their ideas about how most people simply do not read the Bible or Quran. We think that those are things that are factually incorrect, and insofar as we prove to you and as to why in a large majority of cases that does not exist, I think their case simply does not have any basis. But then secondly, we feel that there's a lack of like causal link then on their side of the house, because on their side of the house they say that you don't have things like core values existing, but we tell you that you derive core values, etc., from these very things, from these very like strict requirements in the very first place to begin with. That's the best way through which you can do it in the best possible manner. But then secondly, notice how there's just simply like a big chunk of our case still left unrefuted till prop T. That is to say, our idea about how the church has an incentive to, let's say, assert relative power insofar as insofar as power in terms of like other religious institutions is concerned, insofar as it has an incentive to be the most powerful within society in the very first place to begin with. But okay, then what are the three issues within this debate? Firstly, I'll talk about power. Secondly, I'll talk about how on values versus theology, and thirdly, I'll talk to you about quantity versus quality. What is the first issue then? On power. they say a couple of things within this. They say there's hierarchy within religion. We completely agree with that. They then say that you have, traditional figureheads like heads of families and mullahs, and you'll be forced to give autonomy away. I think that's likely not less likely to happen simply because more people are following it. So the probability of them exploiting you is then lesser in the very first place to begin with. But then secondly, I think that I'll flip that. I'll say that on your side of the house, that's getting worse, because on your side of the house, you give these mullahs the steering wheel. You have this vacuum which they can exploit to, let's say, then push like various extremist narratives. Then on your side of the house, simply because there's a lot of vacuum left, simply because a lot of people simply do not believe in that religion in its truest form in the very first place to begin with. So this means that the probability of fatwas, etc., is then like likely greater on their side of the house. But then secondly, they say you have things like community building, etc. I honestly think that they're probably like talking about our case within like this screen. Why is that so? Because here's the thing, right? You can only have, or the mosque can only create community building, because we're talking about the perception of the mosque can only have that through strict requirements. For example, your people coming up to, for example, the Jummah prayer in congregation, or you generally, I don't know, sitting in itikaf in like mosque, etc. All of that necessarily proves to you as to how you going to the mosque, etc., is the necessary thing that basically builds it, or is the basis of community building then in the very first place to begin with. But then thirdly, we're talking about the interest of religion that is better like served then on our side of the house. They've literally not been debating the motion in the very first place. But what do we tell you within this clash on a comparative? We tell you that it has an incentive to, let's say, gain the attainment of power through things like rituals, etc., and through things like requirements. Because it does not matter if you respect the belief or not because it does not matter, because the church does not matter, let's say, if you respect the belief or not on their side of the house. We think that that's extremely important, because in this way the church has an incentive to make it look distinct, to make it, let's say, to make it look distinct and exclusive then from other religious institutions. At that point, it has to assert some sort of power and dominance. That is the only way through which it can be seen as a force that can be relied upon, or is irreliable. Secondly, we tell you as to how, this is about organized religion and popes, etc. For the simple reason that their argument is rather like not true, and I've literally flipped that on as to how you're creating a vacuum, and the probability of like extremist narratives is then greater on their side of the house, and simply because the incentive structure is still undealt with, I'm unsure as to why they can win this clash there and then. But okay, then on to the second clash. They have onto the second clash on quantity versus quality. We told you a couple of things at first. Our ideas about on as to how you have a religious following, or all of our ideas about how you have free riders then on your side of the house that give this like that basically sent this wrong image within the society in the very first place to begin with. Their first response was pretty funny. Opportunity cost. You'll basically you'll not have to brush teeth. I'm unsure as to why that's like so much important. I always do it before doing sehri, etc. I am unsure as to why the opportunity cost is something that's so much greater. But here's the thing, right? You realize that these things are essential, because those are the things, I don't know, that basically lead to, let's say, you caring about the poor people in the very first place to begin with. Because here's the thing, right? On their side of the house, you are brushing teeth, you are, I don't know, constantly drinking waters 5 times within your fast. How are you then going to, like, I don't know, understand the core values of religion then? This is I'm completely unsure as to why that's true. This is the only mechanism through which you can do this. But the second response is like pretty funny. Why do you don't recognize, and as to why do you do this? I have a couple of responses to this. Firstly, because you've been socialized in a way in which you've actually been told as to why these things matter and why you should necessarily do so. I don't know, you have things like textbooks, etc. Your teachers at school, like, I don't know, like, emphasize this, or generally it's the simple fact that there's a lot of ads that come up on TV, etc. All of this is necessarily boosting as to why people do care. But then the third like response, no one reads the Bible or the Quran. I think that that's not true, because firstly, things like, I don't know, you can still, like, I don't know, read the Quran on your phone, etc. You have proper books, etc. Most people do go through that. You have things like translations available in the current status quo. So I'm unsure as to why the probability of then these people not reading the Quran, etc. is then greater on their side of the house. But their then response, but their then idea within this on quantity was that you have more buy-in, etc. You have more people, and there are three reasons for this: is that religion is outdated, religion is hard to follow, and that it overshadows core values. The third reason is engagement. But there are two main ideas. It is outdated and it is hard to follow. I think that's not true, because there's a lot of flexibility in terms of organized religion, because the organized religion recognizes that you can't, like, I don't know, follow religion every time at like every instance. That's why you have things like qaza prayers, etc. That is why you can probably, like, fast in Shashai like days, etc., because you recognize that you couldn't fast in Ramadan, etc. This flexibility is incorporated within religion. But secondly, I'm unsure as to why it's hard to follow. It will be hard to follow then on your side of the house when a lot of people are not doing it. And so, insofar as a lot of people are not doing it, the probability of then net people like not doing that is then lesser on your side. So the interests of religion are or the interests of the church or the mosque are never then protected on your side of the house. But then secondly, they say God is personal, etc. And like it's a private relationship. Organized religion panel is not personal. It is based upon the ideas of community building, etc. It's based upon the idea that there's a shared identity and there's a shared basis for all of these things. Never engage with them on their side of the house. But on quantity then, and this is pretty simple and pretty like amusing. Because here's the thing, right? Here's how you weigh it up. It is antithetical to the incentive of these very institutions in the very first place. But why? Because of ideas like free rights, etc., where you're constantly messaging and you're constantly indicating that these things are not important, so you're likely to sway away from religion. But lastly, the perception is what it cares about the most, because we're talking about the mosque. So the probability of then, let's say, it being caring more about its more devoted people then is largely or greater than on our side of the house. But then lastly, on like this idea about like values versus theology, they say that you don't teach core values, etc. We've told you as to how you recognize that, and you've been taught through your since the time you were born, etc., to do things like that. But then secondly, we feel that our ideas about theology and as to how religion is something that's rooted within theology. The simple fact that religion is all about theology, and you recognize that there's a larger philosophical goal that is behind the thing that you are pursuing. So the fact that you recognize that you need to understand the basis of what you're doing, the simple fact that that is core basis of your religion, etc., never engage with. Our ideas about preservation and as to how there's a decreasing religiosity due to the, let's say, rise in things like minimalism, things like Orientalism or other narratives, because religion is then only perceived as an ideology in the current status quo. Our ideas about it having a distinct moral value, never engage with. For all given reasons, give this debate up.
Thank you for your speech. Speaker spoke for 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I now invite the reply speaker for team opposition.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. All of proposition's case with this debate is premised on one single assertion: at the point in time that someone follows a requirement of a religion, they're never going to recognize the core value of it. We're a group of 5 pretty liberal Muslims sitting within this room. Maybe we're not as religious as the most extreme people, but we also recognize that when you do things like zakat, it's because the belief in Islam is of giving. When you do things like fast in Ramadan, the belief in Islam is that you should empathize with people. When you do things like, for example, pray to God, the belief in Islam is that you need to be a humble person, that you are not someone that you should bow down in front of God to feel that humility and recognize your place within the universe. If average individuals who are not as religious can believe these things, I'm pretty sure that people who actively participate in the religion, average individuals can recognize this. But that's also because, again, things like Kamal said, your socialization, etc., the fact that alternative sources like your family exist, your parents probably told you at some point, okay, the reason why we do this is because there's a good value attached to it. I'm not sure why exclusively, and they never prove this, why the opportunity cost, even if there is an opportunity cost in how religion is dispensed, why you would always just not tell the core value of something at the point in time the requirements happen. happening. Actually, counterintuitively, we argued at second and third as well that you would actually tell the core values because you feel that they're mutually exclusive, etc. This is actually, and the reason why strict requirements important is something that I'll tell you within this reply, as we did before within our speeches. So then let's talk about core values and what this debate was actually about, because we don't think that kind of very fine distinction made at third proposition is something that is debate winning in any way. So then core values and their translation into actions. We thought that this is very, very important, because it's not just that when you have no strict requirements that you don't practice these values. It's that you also disempower the core value in and of itself. That was analysis that I gave at second opposition that third prop did not engage with. We told you that core values within religion, etc., are going to be disempowered at the point in time that the Pope says, that the clergy says, that the church says. Again, organized religion espouses the narrative that these are not strict requirements, because that is the particular stakeholder and actor this debate is about. We told you also that there are unique incentives created for practice and caring about these religious values because of strict requirements. That is to say, morals, etc., or some conception of an abstract belief exists in society anyways, but you don't practice that because nobody tells you that is that important. We told you all of these things consistently in my speech, also then brought up in the third speech. This was not something that proposition ever dealt with in a meaningful way. We also think the idea on strict requirements is extremely reductionist. It's not just the pillars of Islam, like, praying 5 times a day. It also looks like you should not lie to people. You should not be dishonest. The only thing that you could ascertain from not lying to people is probably that dishonesty is a bad thing. So again, these things and these fine distinctions are not something that they can make from this debate and try to win on that. But what's this debate about at the end of the day? What did they not engage with? We told you that you need to prove benefit to religion in terms of organized religion's interests. That looks like morality within general society, etc. How you act outside of the religion probably does not matter as much to the interests of organized religion. That looks like when they say things like you want more people joining, you want to make joining religion easier, at the point in time that extra followers are antithetical to every single value that you had as a religion for centuries. I don't think those followers are meaningful. I think they're actually part of destroying that very religion and all of its values. We talk to you about the actual bastardization of religion that happens. How religion is rooted in theology. When you talk about the interests of organized religion, you talk about the people who control organized religion. That looks like the church, etc. This is something that was never rebutted as an overarching frame within this debate, right? Again, religion is meant to be exclusive. It's meant to hold a master status in society, not meant to be conflated with any other random ideology it can subscribe in and out of at any time. That exclusivity of religion is why organized religion would always posit this view. We told you about the power of religion, how church has incentives to entrench itself, right? Again, you're not going to have any buy-in, etc., or a primary means of power isn't people being in your religion. If they don't care about your religion, if they don't believe in practice, etc., what power do you have over them? We do not know. But the church's incentives to entrench this stuff, to say that strict requirements matter, etc., to have our importance relative to other religious frame in society, relative to other religions, and wanting to be distinct, that is something that would happen, right? We think that we also told you there's a vacuum created. There can be extremism if organized religion does not espouse what strict requirements are. All of these things they did not engage with, but also the misidentification of less buy-in, which we pointed out since first, that you do not leave religion because of the fact that there are strict requirements, but because of the fact that it is no longer valued in society, and you see that capitalism is something that's fine, religion does not matter, and we live a godless existence. At that point in time, clearly side opposition.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I now invite the proposition reply speaker.
Can we just get 5 seconds? Am I perfectly visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. A good Muslim, a good Christian, has been reduced down to the number of times I pray, the number of times I fast. Not if I care about God, not if I care about sacrifice, not if I care about poor people. That is why, panel, you see disillusionment and disconnect in the status quo with religion and its followers. So its followers don't know what they are following. They don't know why religion is so important, and they don't get the catharsis, the sort of like escape they wanted from religion, because it's been reduced down to a set of practices that they don't even know why do they matter in the first place. This is the most characterization that opposition, it was largely like shying away again and again in this debate. It's something they had to take head on, because no two like strategic observations, right? Our opposition wants to have both things. So they're like, we will perfectly impose these strict restrictions on everyone and also have them perfectly care about the core values and be as committed. We told you that both of these things cannot exist simultaneously. Across three speeches, we gave you structural reasons and opportunity cost. The coercive power the organized religion has over people, the social capital the organized religion has is limited. You cannot at the same time impose restrictions and focus on the consequences of not following those restrictions, while also saying that he still be committed to our religion and still care about following religion and all other aspects of life, because that is important too. Those people could not coexist, something they haven't refuted once across all three speeches. But then second, the idea that flexibility still exists. You have qada prayer, religion accounts for all of these things. So if you don't stand for like the most strict form of these restrictions, then would necessarily on our side, because you're saying that yes, there exists precedents of these restrictions not being as strict, so we find people sometimes not following them if they can't. Like this is them being very uncharitable, because if they had to defend these restrictions, they had to defend them being restricted. But the first issue then, on the opportunity, like on the messaging and where it is preserved better. We win this issue simply because we're told when the focus is on imposition, you focus on the consequences people are going to face when they don't follow these restrictions. You focus on how to follow these restrictions perfectly. You don't focus on the core values. On our side, we rather the messaging to the church and mosques, we focus on these core values. First, explain to people why sacrifice, charity, but being like humble is more important, and then tell them that here these are practices that you can probably put into practice to follow those things. Because even if a person is able to fast 30 days into Ramadan, why will they care about charity outside of Ramadan? Only on our side, when you focus on the core values, when you say that this is not just about this redundant practice, but because of the value that we are reaching, we preserve messaging better. This is this uncertainty. Like, yes, drinking water 5 times during my fast will do nothing. We want people to be uncertain about it. We'd rather want people to focus on helping the poor. We'd rather want people to, in the name of God, like do charity and stuff like that. We don't think not drinking water will solve anything. Not drinking water like shows to God that you care about its beings within Ramadan. But then also including the proximity of God's relationship and all of those things. But on buy-in panel, it's laughable that they think that buy-in is not important within this debate when that's the only purpose of organized religion. We told you that we get, and they misrebut us again and again, because this was not only about new followers or existing followers. You alienate existing followers when they don't pray for three days in a row, and now they think they're bad Muslims just because they weren't able to follow this strict restriction of fasting and praying. And then they're alienated, they're otherized, and then they go away from religion gradually because they don't think that they're people who will go to heaven in the first place. So why even try, right? But then you also got if you like children and who are born into religions, or people who are like on the border. These are the most important people who are organized religion. These people are not alienated on our side when we say that hey, these practices are not the end all be all, and you can be a good Muslim regardless. Or for all of those reasons, we get increased quality of followers when they're more committed to focusing on values. You also get a higher quality when religion is something that is not ostracized, it's not all or nothing, and you can buy into it regardless. For all of those reasons, because you have a greater depth of impact, because you get a scale of impact it is.
Thank you for your speech. The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And with that, I would Thank you for an interesting debate, both the teams. I would now like to request both of you to please move to the main lobby, and we'll be heading over there after the decision is made.
Thanks for the debate, guys. It was fun.
Ahmed Kamil X. I'm just moving Ahmed Kamil to the main session. I'll also stop the recording now.